I had a big thrill a couple of years ago. I was in Barcelona, Spain, and we had there the Olympics. We didn't have the Olympics. The Olympics were held there, and we were at the Olympics. And we had 3,700 King's kids from 100 different countries. Great thrill to me to look out there and see all these kids. They were actually like looking at a great anthill, kids just running every direction. But here they were, kids from the ages of about 8 to 18. But the big thrill for me was the leadership of those kids. The leadership of them were kids that had been raised in the mission. They were kids that I'd helped babysit when they were 2 and 3 years old. Now they were 17 and 18. I saw the Dean of College Communications, Bruce Thompson, his boys there, and Paul Hawkins, another leader in the mission. And as I looked at all of these kids across the platform that were giving leadership, they were from the ages probably of 18. Our kids would have probably been the oldest. Karen at that time would have been 24. And I poked Lauren and I said, hey, the future of the mission's safe. Look at these. All these 3,700 little kids, and look at these kids. They're the ones that are leading them. One time there was a prayer group of these young people that were on the stage holding hands and praying. And I looked at them, and all of their parents were from the first 2 schools that we had taught. And there was a great sense of joy in my heart. So I want to say to you, welcome to the adventure of raising your kids within the mission. If you would interview those children, you'd be really thrilled, I think. Obviously, there's a few exceptions, but there's not very many of the kids that I know about that have been raised in the mission that haven't chosen to go for God and go for Him in a big way. A couple of years ago, I walked into a graduation ceremony that we were having there at our campus in Hawaii. These kids would all be about 17 and 18 and had gone, where parents were missionaries. They were raised in the mission. They'd gone to a variety of kinds of education. Some of them had been in public school, some had been homeschool, some had been correspondence course, some had been to our Christian school. But we were honoring all of these graduates. There were about 13 of them. They stood all up there. The first thing I noticed was they all looked different. That was a great joy to me. There wasn't just a YWAM look for a teenager. Some had their hair straight up and looked really mod and funny looking shoes and all the rest of it. And others were very conservative in their dress and just this great variety. And as they were interviewed, what do you do? What are you planning to do with your life? These are 18-year-old, 17-year-old kids raised in this mission. Well, I'm planning to go to do my coursework with the University of the Nations. I'm going to a DTS, and then I'm going to get involved in political science because I want to be in the diplomatic corps. Why, I'm going to do my discipleship training school, and then I'm going to Russia, and I'm going to study Russian. I'm planning on being in the media. I would like to be a broadcast journalist. And as they went through, every one of them had big plans and absolutely no doubt in their mind that they were going to be fulfilled. None whatsoever. Because they'd been part of a faith movement, had seen castles and ships and buildings, big things happen. Well, of course God called them to do a big thing. He was going to do it through them. They had been a part of a lifestyle that created faith in God and faith in themselves. What we find is kids are just preteens. I think God designed this age in a really special way. I just adore little boys from about the age of 9 to 11, right around in there. They are these entrepreneurs. They're building things. They're designing things. They do whole housing developments in tree forts. They're selling things. They get everybody's stuff. They would, in our campus, they would go door to door. If anybody got anything they want, get it rid of, and you'd see them then all lined up having their little bartering, and they're always thinking of some kind of invention. Not every child, but characteristically and collecting sticks of every kind. All little boys like sticks. They're different sizes and shapes and feels, and they turn into these wonderful things. And I mean, these are not really sticks. It just looks like a stick to you, but not really. I mean, this is a lightning rod. This is a sword. This is a fishing pole. It's a warrior's club. It's all kinds of things. And I mean, I've watched lots and lots of little boys, and I see this creative energy coming into them at that particular stage. And I feel like God puts that burst of creativity, that entrepreneur thing that's in them naturally, He's preparing them for their adulthood. They're trying out being a store man. They're trying out running an office. They're trying out all of these kinds of things, and they're getting ready for what's coming for them next. We also see in that age that they have these gangs, you know, little clubs. The girls are just like that too. There are clubs in their peer group and pulling everybody together, and they're just testing a lot of things out. You'll also notice, particularly with little girls, and it's with boys too, but you see it more predominantly with little girls. It seems at that stage, they're just all over you from about 10, 11, 12 years old. They're hugging their daddies all the time and their mommies, and if you're standing with them, they got their arms and their legs around you. They're with you all the time physically. It's like they can't be loved on enough. God's getting them ready for their bodies to have the purpose of multiplication, all the passion and chemistry that goes with that. And He's designed in them, in a normal, right family atmosphere, for that cup, before all of that physical part wakes up, to be filled up to the top. And with love and security. And He's giving it an extra dose, getting ready to go into these teen years. Now, in days gone past, in the days of the Bible, people moved into independence, away from their families much earlier. They lived in extended families, but young women would be married at the age of 14. Young men would not be going to school until they were 21 years of age. They would be out working and taking responsibility at a much earlier age than what we do. And I believe in the way God, this is Darlene now, this isn't some authority, this is just my thinking. I believe in the way God made people, that He intended us to be independent much earlier than our society allows us to be. And so part of what we go through with our teenagers is they're wanting to be their own person and have their own responsibility. I point out at this chart, this direction yesterday, some very good teachers by the name of John and Paula Sanford have an excellent book on growth and development. And they describe it like the rings of a tree. And this first ring of the tree, what I had put up here early on, the first ring, that's where basic trust is established, all right? Now, if this is established correctly in those early years, that is our basis of knowing acceptance. We're loved, we're trusted, we're secure. Later on, then we can easily be accepted and not easily rejected. In this next ring, as we move on, independence. We talked about those twos, that ability to say no, that finding out that I am different from my parents. Well, that's the basis for a lack of the fear of man. I am my own person, and it's okay. I'm different than my parents. I'm not totally attached to them. And the thing is, parents, we must remember they're made in the image of God, not our image, the image of God. 3, this next ring, they begin to take initiative. Little kids, they're able now to go out and play with their friends. They initiate things. Everything doesn't have to be initiated by mom and all within the household.
But we encourage that, and this is where having good preschools and other experiences that children have, being able to take initiative, the ability to walk with their peer group, makes that the basis for being their own person too. They've moved out. They've been accepted by their friends. They've maybe helped lead some of their friends in some things that were good and some things that were bad as they played, but they had their leadership. They begin to see where you watch little kids at play and you learn a tremendous about what kind of kids they're going to be in the future. Then there's that gang group, the peer group, where they move outside of the home and they challenge the values. And there's positive things that we do with Girl Guides and Boy Scouts and Royal Rangers and other kinds of things that try to help kids as they move into that. Now, back in these areas, friends, as we begin to help children take initiative. Remember I mentioned yesterday about having children, praying for your children each year of their life, saying, where have they taken initiative? Where can I give them more responsibility? Each year trying to help them grow up and acknowledge that they are a person that's going to be a responsible, wonderful, exciting adult. And we're helping them get there. If we do that, then the positive part for knowing how that they're their own person is they won't easily comply with what goes on around them. They know how to think for themselves. They know who they are. They know what their belief system is. They know what values are. And then when opportunities come to make decisions, they can think for themselves. If we don't get through these stages well, there's two things that happens. Either you comply, and you are a person that cannot think for yourself. You will go whichever way. Or you're a person that rebels and dominates and becomes very self-centered. So all of these stages that we go through help us develop into being the whole people that God wants us to be. So here you have this teenager. Hopefully we've done all of this as well as we know how. We've raised this kid to love God, he's involved in the community, and all of a sudden you think, what happened to him? They become so self-focused. Because the big thing right now, friends, is I've got to find out about the rest of my life. I am my own person. All these wonderful values that I've learned from my parents, all that I've been exposed to in the mission, is this really what I want? All their hormones are going full blast, don't know quite what to do with their body, got thoughts that they've never had before. Physically, there's a lot of disorientation. In a few years, I'm going to be out of the house. Who am I? And I feel like we have to, as a community, recognize that this is a season that every teenager is going to go through. She's going to have some kind of reflective time in which they're going to be more self-focused than probably ever before. Because they're trying to work out, who am I? And sometimes as Christian parents, it's at this season we do it worse than anybody. Because we want these kids to do it so right. So the local pastor's son, who's been a good kid, goes out and gets drunk. And the pastor, of course, is devastated, and he says to this kid, no son of mine's going to go out and get drunk. Well, what he's trying to prove right then, that he's different than the son of the pastor. He wants to be his own person. And he's probably going to have to go out and do it again to be able to let his dad know that he's trying to be somebody different, and he's in a stage that's not very good, but he is different than his father. And as Christians, the way we do it, because we know how bad things can be for them, many times we come down with more rules, more dominating more. And the kid, in order to get free and be able to think for himself, he pushes it out farther. So how are we going to handle this in our YWAM community? And not every child is going to rebel in some awful way. My personal feeling is we don't have to go through the terrible teens. If I have kept affirming my child every year of his life that he is of importance and that each year he's getting more responsibility and I'm giving him more freedom and more freedom and more freedom, he's not going to have to jump up and down to say, hey, I need some freedom. I've been trying to give it to him. But he still is going to have to go through, she is still going to have to go through a period of individuating in which they become different than their parents. And for some, they may have to look real hard at the lifestyle we had raised them in. And so within our communities, friends, let's be real friends to the teenagers. Sometimes I, as the non-parent, have far more influence on that child at that particular time. I've seen Christians who have just come to the end of their tether with their kids. These good kids that all of a sudden are testing all the boundaries. And if they go stay with Aunt Susie or go visit somebody else and live with them for a few months, they just are as great as can be, no problem. Because the boundaries aren't there. And it isn't even that the parents are being terribly overbearing. They just don't have anything to prove when they're at Aunt Susie's. And they can stop and think things through for themselves. I've taken in quite a few kids like that, and I love it. They just want to be space. They just need to have the opportunity to think things through for themselves. I bless the Lord that our children didn't have to go through some awful rebellion. And I believe it's based on the fact that we did try to give them as much freedom as we possibly could. But here we are, front and center figures in the middle of a community. And the name Cunningham sort of lets you know who you're attached to, doesn't it? And for my kids, both of them, it was the year of 14 that was the tough year. So that year, we had our daughter, she went out to Hong Kong, and she was with Gary and Helen Stevens for that summer. They were really close friends, and she was a nanny to their child, and they gave great input into her life, and it was a good season for her. David's 15th year, both my kids were real easy kids. Easy personalities, not difficult children. Stubborn as can be, but a few other, we know where they got that. But suddenly this kid of mine, this boy that just was such a PR kind of person, became so self-focused. Karen said to me one day, "Who is this we're living with, Mom?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know him either." I said, "He's entirely different." And I said one day to David, I said, David, I have never been a mother of a teenage boy, and I'm not sure how I'm doing. And I'm really not sure how you're doing as a teenager either. He said, "Me either, Mom." And he had always been really kind to all the kids on the campus. And there were little boys, he was about 14 or 15 during this time, little boys 10 and 9 that lived just down the hall from us. He always really looked out after those kids. And I heard him raise his voice to one of those children, which I had never heard. We were driving to school one day. I said, "David, I heard you shout at Nathan." I said, "I know it must have hurt him." He said, "I did? Oh, Mom, that's awful." And I realized he was just struggling with a lot of things. I felt like in that year, friends, that I didn't hardly pray for anything else but David. I'd go in at night and walk around his bed and pray in tongues and just rebuke and pray for, thinking he is sound asleep. I only found out 1 year ago when I heard him counseling a kid. He said, "Oh, I know what it's like." He said, "My mom was so worried about me when I was like you. She'd be running around my bed praying and rebuking, casting out the devil." He said, "She never knew I knew." I said, "What?" But what I knew, he wasn't out doing drugs or drinking or doing anything he shouldn't be doing. But I could see the struggle. And I felt like the devil was after my kid. And never had he been more vulnerable. Never had he been testing the boundaries so much. And God is so, so faithful, friends. He will help you. If you keep in an attitude of prayer, God will tell you things. I was in Switzerland speaking, and I felt like the Lord told me something about David. When I came back home, I said to him, David, I think we need to talk about something. I said, when I was in Switzerland, I felt like the Lord told me that you were testing the boundaries in this category. What? He said, even when you're not here, I can't get away with anything. There were negotiable things with the children in lots of categories. You give more and more negotiables because we are now not trying to be a dominant authority. We're trying to be guiding and counselors. And so you give as much space to negotiate things. But I had a couple things that were just non-negotiable. And one had to do with their curfew at night. We live in a small community where there's not very many things to do. And so I said to them, it is not fair that I should lose my sleep worrying about where you are and what you're doing. This is the curfew, and this is not negotiable. If you got a really good reason, you could call up and we could talk about it, but it's got to be a really good reason. I wake up one night and I know that David's not in. Almost before I'm thinking about what I'm doing, I'm getting my jeans and I'm in the car and I know exactly where to go. Now, I knew he and his girlfriend had had a fight. He was really impossible to live with. And I went to right where they were. Hi, David. See what time it is? Yes. They were not doing one thing wrong. She's sitting on one side of the car, he's sitting on the other side of the car, and they're talking. There's nothing that is wrong. I said, David, we'll talk about this in the morning. So when we talked in the morning, he says, Mom, I have never been late before. We were absolutely doing nothing wrong. Why are you so hard on me? Why are you so upset? I said, oh, David, this is a very serious infraction. I said, it doesn't have to do with what you were doing. It's that you were so caught up in your emotions. You were so concerned about the relationship. You were letting your emotions lead you, and you didn't look at the clock. I said, this is how people get involved in immorality. This is how people gamble. This is how people make wrong decisions, by letting the stress of emotions lead them at that time. And you were being led by your emotions, right? Right. That's why I'm making a big deal out of it. And God will be faithful to you, friends. He'll help you with this time with your kids. Now, one of the great ways that he helped me is that the relationship with my kids during this difficult time remained absolutely open. We kept our friendship intact. And I was trying my very, very best to not do anything that would shut the door on the friendship. I also was just so blessed that my kids had so many adult great friends in our immediate community. And those people were giving them input. David was wearing his hair in about 10 different colors. Well, not 10, that's an exaggeration, but several different colors. Looking as weird as can be. I went to the girl that did his hair for him. I said to her, hey, remember your friendship with me, okay? Don't let him do anything too awful. Try to give him a little guidance. And people would say to me, how come you're letting David look like that? And I said to him, listen, friends, if this is as bad as it gets, I'm getting off real well. He's trying to say he's somebody besides Lauren Cunningham's son. There is a tremendous amount of pressure here, more than for most kids. So we've got to give him enough space. Well, during this time, as I'm racing around the bed, thinking I'm not being seen or heard, David would have dreams in the night. And over a period about 6 or 8 months, and it's interesting to me, I just talked to him about this not very long ago, and he hardly even remembers these dreams. But they were so significant to me. So I'm having coffee in the morning, we're talking, he's getting ready to go to school. And I said, funny dream last night, Mom. I'm saying, talk to me about it. He said I was on an island. They were going to blow up the island, and there was a ship coming to take everybody away. And he said, we had to go up and get our ticket. He said, when I went up to get my ticket, they said, oh, no, there's just a couple of people that we don't have room for, and we've chosen you because you're strong, because you're Darlene Cunningham's son. He says, but I wanted the ticket. And I realized what he was struggling with. I realized what he was struggling with was his own identity separate from his father's. Well, through that next 6 months, we had lots of experiences like that. And then we had the final one. And he told me about this particular dream and how in this dream, he and his friends were cruising in the supermarket getting chips and Coke and stuff. And this girl came up in a bikini, really cute. And he said, we were talking with her. And he said, I saw that there was a cord to her, and I looked around the corner, and there was an evil presence. And she was pulling us in to the evil presence. He said, I had Grandpa's buck knife in my pocket, and I picked it up, and I threw it, and I severed it. And I knew we were done. We'd won the battle. And we had. I had my kid back. But there was a struggle there. And friends, I give you that illustration in detail to show you the faithfulness of God. And that God will be faithful to you. But also we need the support and the space within the community for kids when they're going through that. Are you with me? So let's not judge one another. Let's be careful how we do that. Evaluate carefully for your teenagers during that season. It can be a short season or a long season. None of us know quite how that's going to be. My personal conviction is we weigh it really hard for them to choose wrong. They still can. But all of this good stuff I've put in there, it's my trust that they will hold on to it. And when that battle comes and they've got to pull themselves separate than their parents, then they will know. All right?